This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
Welcome to the Roger Stone Show here on the Red Apple Audio Networks. I've given so many interviews on the LBJ-JFK connection and the release of the JFK documents. Well, I'm fighting a little laryngitis, but as the great Al Jolson said, the show must go on. I'm a veteran of 13 national presidential campaigns. I'd like to say I've spent 50 years in the corroded rectum of the two-party system, and I've pretty much seen it all. But here we criticize Republicans and Democrats, and we bring you the stone-cold truth. So let's dive right into it. The faux outrage of Democrats over the leaked signal thread is just that, politics. No classified information was involved. In fact, what we learned was a highly successful effort to open the sea lanes, which were being harassed by a ragtag band of rebels funded and structured by the Iranians. Overlooked in this exchange is the comment of National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. He said, whether we pull the plug or not today, European navies do not have the capacity to defend against the types of sophisticated anti-ship cruise missiles and drones the Houthis are now using. So whether it's now or several weeks from now, it will have to be the United States that reopens these shipping lanes. Per the president's request, we are working with the Department of Defense and state to determine how to compile the costs associated and levy them on the Europeans. There is Donald Trump always putting America first. But what's really shocking is that our British and French allies are unable to do the job, and the United States must step up. Now, the Democrats have politicized this. I went back and looked. Mark Warner, the senator from Virginia, here's what he had to say to a Senate hearing.
Contact the defense secretary or others after this specific military planning was put out and say, hey, we should be doing this in a skiff?
There was no classified material that was shared in that.
So then if there was no classified material, share it with the committee. You can't have it both ways. These are important jobs. This is our national security. Bobbing and weaving and trying to, filibuster your answer. So please answer the contact the defense secretary.
That was, of course, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard. Warner strangely registered no such concern when Robert Malley, a high-level Biden State Department official, leaked top-secret classified documents to the Iranians. It was the biggest spy scandal since Alger Hiss, and his Confederates remained in the Biden administration long after Mr. Malley's security clearance had been suspended. I went back and looked. Senator Warner also registered no concerns about Hillary Clinton and her sending of classified documents over an illegal server located in her bathroom. On the other hand, Senator Warner was a key player in the promulgation of the fake Steele dossier. That is the dossier put together and paid for by Hillary Clinton's campaign. There are texts that we have seen in which the senator handled this, but said he didn't want any paper trail. That's because it was a fraud. In fact, the Senate Intelligence Committee report on Russian collusion put together by Senator Warner is complete bunk. I can tell you that every single one of the references to me in that is completely and totally false. It is a paste-up job where you go to the Huffington Post and you just paste together a bunch of false statements and call it fact. Disgraceful. No, it's politics, folks. The point is that the president made a decision that we had to have the sea lanes in the Red Sea open, that we could not be harassed by a ragtag band of Iranian-backed rebels, and that for commerce and security reasons, he would keep the high seas free for travel and commerce. President Trump, we have now multiple judges saying that President Trump does not have the authority to deport dangerous terrorists and criminals who are in the country illegally. Not surprisingly, the U.S. District Court of Appeals in D.C. has upheld that ruling by Judge Boasberg. No surprise to me, this is the same court that upheld the unconstitutional gag order on me when I went to trial in that very court. Judge Amy Berman Jackson ruled recently also that the president doesn't have the authority to discard or disband the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which of course he does. It's not really surprising. Both Judge Boasberg and Judge Jackson showed up when President Trump was indicted to sit in the crowd, not in a formal capacity, but in informal capacity. Judge Jackson, of course, falsely accused me of covering up for the president. Let's listen to Judge Jackson, or a comment about her on CNN.
Do you use Signal?
I use Signal to talk to someone because it is safer. I actually encourage people to use Signal.
I'm sorry, that is the wrong clip. Let's go to RS1.
They were welcoming this help from the Russian government, and she pointed out Roger Stone was lying to Congress on behalf of Donald Trump to protect him.
To which I say, lying to cover up what? Russian collusion? There was none. WikiLeaks collaboration? No evidence of that. I was neither charged with nor convicted of lying to cover up for Donald Trump. It is outrageous, of course, that this is the same judge, Amy Berman Jackson, who withheld exculpatory evidence from my lawyers. As we learned on Election Day of 2020, the final report of Robert Mueller proved that he had no evidence whatsoever of Russian collusion, WikiLeaks collaboration, or any other crime on my part. I looked in the Bible and I saw this. As all the people listened to him, Jesus said to the disciples, "Be on your guard against the teachers of the law who like to walk around with their long robes and love to be greeted with respect in the marketplace, who choose the reserved seats in the synagogues and the best places at feasts, who take advantage of widows and rob them of their homes, and then make a show of saying long prayers, for their punishment will be all the worse." This is the best reference I can see to the judicial tyranny that is being used against our president. It is nothing less than an unconstitutional effort to usurp the executive authority of the president of the United States. And it is a slap in the face to the American people who voted for the America First agenda. I believe President Trump will prevail in the U.S. Supreme Court. In fact, I pray for this. When we come back, Ken Kachigian, among others, former White House aide to Presidents Reagan and Nixon, is going to weigh in on Signalgate and a lot more. So whatever you do, don't touch that dial.
This is The Roger Stone Show.
Hi, this is Joe from Vanta. In today's digital world, compliance regulations are changing constantly, and earning customer trust has never mattered more. Vanta helps companies get compliant fast and stay secure with the most advanced AI, automation, and continuous monitoring out there. So whether you're a startup going for your first SOC 2 or ISO 27001, or a growing enterprise managing vendor risk, Vanta makes it quick, easy, and scalable. And I'm not just saying that because I work here. Get started at Vanta.com.
Hey guys, have you heard of Goldbelly? It's this amazing site where they ship the most iconic famous foods from restaurants across the country, anywhere, nationwide. I've never found a more perfect gift than food. They ship Chicago deep dish pizza, New York bagels, Maine lobster rolls, and even Ina Garten's famous cakes. So if you're looking for a gift for the food lover in your life, head to goldbelly.com and get 20% off your first order with promo code GIFT.
This episode is brought to you by Factor. Optimize your nutrition this year with Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal service. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved, ready to eat in just 2 minutes. Choose from 40 weekly options across 8 dietary preferences like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Eat smarter at factormeals.com/listen50 and use code listen50 for 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Factormeals.com/listen50, code listen50. T's and C's apply.
Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone, who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now, he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone.
Roger Stone.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group. Now, here's Roger Stone.
Welcome back. This is Roger Stone, and you're back on the Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Audio Network. I don't let a little laryngitis get in the way because there's so much hot political news for us to go through. The Atlantic's release of the Signal Group chat, according to my friend Ken Kachigian, opened the door for the New York Times and the Washington Post to do what they do best, blow hot air from short memories. Fortunately, Trump's team will learn from this damage-free mistake and move on, but the media giants conveniently overlook how they loved, back in June of 1971, the massive release of the secret and top secret Pentagon Papers. Remember that? They made the man who leaked it a hero. That seriously damaged President Nixon's ability to negotiate an end to the Vietnam War. When the New York Times publisher, Arthur Sulzberger, was asked about our government's concerns that its Pentagon Papers publication undermined the faith of foreign governments in our ability to deal in confidence, he's reported to have said, "Oh, that's a lot of baloney. I mean, really. No, I say really." How their views have changed. Now the pages of the New York Times and the Washington Post wax indignant over the Signal Group's security breaches. In 1971, the Times and the Post competed for Pulitzer Prize with floods of top-secret releases, even as Hanoi slammed the door on a new peace protocol while American men were being killed. Wallowing in this hypocrisy is the familiar pathway of the New York Times and the Washington Post. Those are the words of my friend Ken Kachigian, who joins us shortly here on the Roger Stone Show. Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna opens her hearings tomorrow to review what is missing from the JFK document archives releases. All documents have now been posted, and I can tell you they are more than incomplete. For example, where is the Nix film? This is an 8mm film shot by Orville Nix, who was standing in the Texas School Book Depository shadow on Dealey Plaza across from Abraham Zapruder. His film is far more famous. The reason that Nix's film is of interest to historians is because, well, he was filming with a zoom lens, and his film, I think, could tell us whether, consistent with the recent documentary put out by Paramount Plus, in which multiple doctors who attended JFK at Parkland Hospital said that they had seen wounds consistent with Kennedy being shot from the front and the back. The government seized Nick's film. We have seen several altered versions of it. The Assassinations Record Review Board reviewed it, but it was not among those items released by the National Archive. You see, when the president ordered the full release of all of the Kennedy material, he specifically ordered the release of the Kennedy Assassination Records collection. Unfortunately, we know from the government's own statements that there are many documents missing from that collection. Some of them at the Secret Service, some of them with Army intelligence, some of them with the FBI, some of them with the IRS, and so on. For example, the House Select Committee on Assassinations back in the 1970s, 1978, I believe, said after an exhaustive investigation that the death of John F. Kennedy involved organized crime, that they were heavily involved in Kennedy's murder. Yet we have seen no evidence released from the National Archives to bolster this claim. Specifically, where are the recorded confessions of Carlos Marcello? The Department of Justice should be instructed, I believe, to request the unsealing of the tape conversations between Carlos Marcello and his cellmate, whose name was Van Landingham, that were recorded as part of the Camtex undercover sting operations between 1985 and 1986. These tapes were transmitted to the JFK collection. We know that they're in the government's possession. According to the FBI unit director at the time, Marcello told Mr. Van Landingham that he had ordered Kennedy's assassination. Where, I ask, is that document? I'm also very curious about the situation regarding Victoria Adams. She was an employee of the Texas School Book Depository who provided testimony relevant to the events following the assassination of the president. Victoria Adams worked on the 4th floor of the Texas Depository Building for Scott Forsman, a publishing company. She testified that she was watching the presidential motorcade from a 4th floor window along with 2 of her colleagues when the shots were fired. According to her account, within a minute of the shooting, she and Sandra Stiles, one of her friends, left the window and descended the rear stairs from the 4th floor to the 1st floor to exit the building and see what was happening outside. Adams stated that she neither saw nor heard Lee Harvey Oswald. This was a wooden staircase, or for that matter, anyone else on the stairs during her descent. Now, this is significant because according to the official timeline established by the Warren Commission, Oswald was supposed to have descended from the 6th floor to the 2nd floor via the same staircase shortly after the shooting, before being encountered by Dallas police officer Marion Baker and depository superintendent Roy Truly in the 2nd floor lunchroom around 90 seconds after the shots. Oswald was reportedly neither agitated nor out of breath. Now, Adams' testimony suggests that Oswald had indeed come down the stairs at that time. She would have encountered him, or at a minimum, she would have heard him. But there is nothing in the documents that have been released that address the question of Victoria Adams. We're also expected to believe that Oswald had time to hide the rifle, which we're told was a leaky World War II vintage Carcano military-grade weapon. Yet he had, according to the paraffin tests conducted by the Dallas Police Department, no powder burns, no nitrates on his arms, his chest, or his cheeks. No, not possible. Coming up with us, Shane Stevens, who's released a bombshell audio tape that will tell us who did kill John F. Kennedy. You're listening to The Roger Stone Show. Don't go away.
Faraday presenta Ojos con Alergia y Picazón contra el jardinero. Y el ganador es Faraday Extra Fuerte. Para aliviar la picazón de los ojos por alergia, actúa más rápido y supera a Claritin y Flonase aún a las 24 horas. Faraday, adelante.
This episode is brought to you by Hulu, presenting Paradise. Paradise is Hulu's critically acclaimed addictive drama series starring Sterling K. Brown, Julianne Nicholson, and James Marsden. The Daily Beast calls Paradise your next TV obsession, and the New York Times says it's exhilarating in all the right ways. Paradise is for your Emmy consideration in all categories, including Outstanding Drama Series. For more information, visit fyc.hulu.com.
Chronic spontaneous urticaria, or chronic hives with no known cause. It's so unpredictable. It's like playing pinball. Itchy, red bumps start on my arm, then my back. Sometimes my legs. Hives come out of nowhere. And it comes and goes. But I just found out about a treatment option at treatmyhives.com. Take that, chronic hives. Learn more at treatmyhives.com.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
And we're back. It's the Roger Stone Show here on the Red Apple Audio Networks. Now I am joined by Ken Kachigian, who served as a trusted speechwriter, confidant, and strategist to political legends and presidential giants, Ronald Reagan and Richard Nixon, whether in the Oval Office, on Air Force One, at Camp David, or at the Western White House. Ken Kachigian was an eyewitness and an insider to the 20th century's greatest historical moments. He is also, in his own right, one of the very best and storied political strategists in the Republican Party today. He is a man I'm honored to call friend. Ken Kachigian, welcome.
Hello?
Yes. Ken, welcome to the Roger Stone Show.
Hi, Roger.
So your take on this brouhaha regarding the Signal chat, we call it Signalgate now, got a huge amount of repeats on social media. So sum this up for us, because you were one of the first to point out the incredible hypocrisy of the left and the Democrats.
Well, Roger, it's just insane. Some of us have some history going back. And, of course, I go back to the Nixon administration when there was a huge inflammation over the Pentagon Papers. You were just a kid at the time. But there was a huge explosion back in 1971 when the Pentagon Papers were released. And this was a secret document that was prepared during the Kennedy administration. It was commissioned by the Defense Secretary, Robert McNamara, which was basically an embarrassment of the Kennedy administration of how they conducted the Vietnam War. And it was a exegesis of how the war was conducted and the embarrassment of all the mistakes they had made. And Daniel Ellsberg was at the Rand Corporation, and he was a consultant to the Pentagon at the time. And he was sort of a lunatic, crazy guy and unstable person, and he became a total anti-war activist, and he was one of those who took it upon himself and thought he was a patriot, and therefore he had the self-righteousness on his own, and he said, well, I'm okay. I can leak this totally secret document full of much secret information, and I'll just put it out, and I'll give it to the New York Times and the Washington Post and LA Times and Boston Globe and everybody else. And it's full of secret information and full of secret documents, and put it out so that the American people will pressure Richard Nixon, and he'll pull all the troops out of Vietnam, and end the war and end the war in Vietnam, and I'll be and pressure him to end the war like and it should. So my point is that when he released these papers and all the secrecy, all the secret documents that were in it, the Washington Post and the New York Times exulted in this release of all this secret information, and they were so pleased with it, and they looked for getting Pulitzer Prizes, and in fact, I think they actually won Pulitzer Prizes for release of this information. 60 Minutes, CBS, even though Ellsberg was being sought on criminal charges for releasing these secret papers, 60 Minutes had him on for an interview and turning into a national hero at the time. And so my point is that back then the national media, the left wing, the media and the network newses were turning this person who leaked secret information into a national hero, and yet today on this Signal. The Signal chat thing that came out, which was, and at the end of the day, Roger, it's relatively, it was sort of a stupid kind of leak that took place, and then it's did no damage nationally at the end of the day, I think, and it's a mistake that's going to be rectified. That has no comparison to what happened with the Pentagon Papers. And yet the New York Times and Washington Post are publishing columns, and social media is going crazy about, and even some of our friends on the conservative side, and even one of my former colleagues, Peggy Noonan, in the Wall Street Journal, is poo-pooing and criticizing the president for and his staff for what took place. But at the end of the day, what I've seen in the past, there are much more serious things have taken place where the left-wing media has forgiven vast, much more serious leaks. And back in the day, back in the Nixon years, I have to tell you, there were terrible security leaks taking place all the time, Roger.
Yeah. Ken has written the definitive political book. Actually, National Review said exactly that. It is behind closed doors. You can get it by going to ReaganandNixon.com. If you love politics, if you loved Ronald Reagan and President Nixon, this book is indispensable. It tells you the behind-the-scenes story of those two great presidencies as only someone as close as Ken Kachigin could know it. I want to commend that to you. We'll talk a little bit more about it when we get back. I have highlighted, Ken, the particular hypocrisy of Senator Mark Warner. When we learned that Hillary Clinton had used an illegal server in her bathroom to send classified documents, he said nothing. When Robert Malley, a high-level Biden State Department official, was caught leaking classified documents to Iran, once again, Mark Warner said nothing. He was a central actor in pushing the whole Steele dossier fraud. We know that from his own leaked text messages. This is just politics, is it not?
Roger, you know what? Here's what's going on. The Democrats are running scared. They're not doing well. They're losing the battle against Trump on all fronts. And you know what they want to do? They want to change the subject. This is old. This is old stuff going way back when. And this is, you know me. I've been in politics now for 50 years. I started with the master Richard Nixon, and then I was Ronald Reagan's chief speechwriter and strategist. I know this stuff going way back. When you're behind in politics, you change the subject. And when people read my book by going to ReaganandNixon.com, they'll see some great stories about all of this. But this is exactly what's happened. The Democrats are running behind. They're running scared. They're losing battles on all fronts. So what they want to do is they want to change the subject. So the Democrats you cited, and like Mark Warner, they put them out. They're shoving them out in front of the cameras. They're shoving them out in social media, precisely for that purpose, is to have them to chase another rabbit. Not to mix a metaphor for on Easter, as Easter's approaching, but it's precisely for that purpose, is to get people looking at another story. I was just at another group here at breakfast out here in California, and telling them about when Ronald Reagan was riding high back in after the 1980 victory he had, but then it didn't take a long time before the media started going after him, because the Democrats were so upset at losing the Senate and seeing Reagan victories that the media started going after him. So when things are going favorable for Republican presidents and people like Reagan and Donald Trump, they always want to change the subject. So as is the case against Trump and was the case against Ronald Reagan, when things are going well, they want to change the subject, and it's hypocrisy at its highest. And
all right, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back with Ken Kachigian.
Now, it's time for Protecting Your Future, sponsored by Colonial Metals Group. Here's Roger Stone.
In these turbulent times, with the Fed insisting they answer to no one and printing money like there's no tomorrow, with the national debt in the trillions and unsustainable, and with 90 lawsuits challenging the right of Elon Musk and Donald Trump to ferret out not millions, not billions, but trillions of waste, fraud, and corruption, now is the time to protect your future, your retirement, and do it with the strength of gold. You can do it by acquiring precious metals like gold and silver. You can convert your IRA, your 401k, or your cash savings, and you can do it tax-free. Protect yourself with gold. Go to colonialmetalsgroup.com/stone or go to freegoldguide.com. These are the people I trust. You'll be glad you did.
This is the Roger Stone Show.
Choosing a bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drink that's all flavor and just 100 calories? Easy. Choosing between creamy vanilla, double chocolate, and sea salt caramel flavors? A little harder. Try the delicious new Starbucks Frappuccino light drinks. Look for them wherever you buy groceries. Start with Starbucks coffee.
BTW, FYI. Visit Nexplanon.com RN to learn about Nexplanon. It's an adjustable implant, 68 milligrams RadioPay. Or ask your HCP IRL. Okay? TTYL.
At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Ranked #1 in innovation for 10 consecutive years and #2 among public universities for employability. ASU isn't just ahead of the curve, it's creating new paths to success. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online, that's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone, who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now, he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone.
Roger Stone.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group. Now, here's Roger Stone.
And we are back. I'm Roger Stone, and you are in the Stone Zone. I'm struggling with a touch of laryngitis here, so I appreciate our listeners struggling along with me. I'm talking to Ken Kachigian. He is a trusted speechwriter, confidant, and strategist to President Ronald Reagan and Richard Nixon, far senior to me. He has written the definitive political book, Behind Closed Doors. You can get that by going to ReaganandNixon.com. This is one of the most important political books I have ever read. Ken, I want to ask you, you were part of one of the, many have said, the best, the most talented speechwriting team in presidential history, a team that included Peggy Noonan, Peter Robinson, Clark Judge, Josh Gilder, Mari Mossing, Will, Dana Rohrabacher, Lyndon Parvin, and of course Ben Elliott. And the saddest thing I learned this week is another member of that team, Tony Dolan, a man who I knew since I was 16 years old, passed last week. He was a hardliner. He wrote some of the president's most memorable phrases. He was a devout Roman Catholic. He was a staunch anti-communist. Your thoughts on the late Tony Dolan?
Well, Tony Dolan, I supervised Tony Dolan when I was head of presidential speechwriting, and Tony was somebody who was a very strong person in the speechwriting staff, and I first met him when in the 1980 campaign when he worked in the Arlington headquarters, and I was traveling with the candidate Governor Reagan, and so Tony would send speeches, and he was a very ardent supporter of the Reagan candidacy, and he was a real trooper, and he was strong, especially when I got to the White House. And what he really wanted to focus on was working on Cold War speeches for President Reagan. And I have to say, Tony could be cantankerous and difficult, and because he was such an ardent Cold Warrior. And so we had, sometime I had put a harness on him when I worked with him. But at the end of the day, what he wanted to do was what we all wanted to do, was to help President Reagan win the Cold War. And so Tony came up with some strong phraseology, which ended up in a couple of Reagan's very important speeches. And so, like anybody who served in those positions and worked day and night to support one of the great presidential giants and presidential legends of American history, we should all mourn the loss of somebody who worked steadfastly in forwarding that cause. So rest in peace for Tony Dolan.
As I have said, you have written what I think is the definitive work for those who want to understand the workings of the Reagan and Nixon White House. Your book, Behind Closed Doors. Folks, you can go to ReaganandNixon.com to purchase a copy. If you love politics, if you love Reagan, if you loved Nixon, if you want the inside story, this is the book to buy. It is amazing. I couldn't put it down. I zoomed through it, then I reread it. Ken, tell us about your book.
Well, it was an important book. It was an important story to tell, because I tell people I got my PhD at the University of Reagan, but I got my master's and bachelor's degree at the College of Richard Nixon. I volunteered for him in the '68 campaign, and then ended up working in the White House and then final all through the Watergate defense, and then worked with him on his memoirs and supervised the David Frost interviews alongside him. And then it's through Richard Nixon that I got the reference to work in the Reagan campaign, and after traveling with Ronald Reagan in 1980 and then working closely with him through the 80, 84 campaigns and throughout the Reagan presidency, I felt like I had to tell the story of Ronald Reagan's presidency and having the opportunity to work on some of the greatest speeches of his presidency. But more important, Roger, was that I got to help. I got to help shape Ronald Reagan's crusade right there in 1981, doing what he had hoped to do, what Donald Trump is doing now, to turn America around. And he started it. He started that crusade in 81, and that's what I do. I achieve in those first chapters of my book, which they'll find when they go to ReaganandNixon.com and buy the book. But that 81 economic recovery against the disastrous days of Jimmy Carter, for those who love history, they'll find how we changed that. And it was such a wonderful time working on the Reagan crusade. It was such a legendary time in history. And that was so important for me to set it out. I didn't have a ghostwriter, and it took me 4.5 years to work on the book. I had so many notes, and this is surprising to so many people. I kept a tape-recorded diary in the 1980 campaign, so I have chapter and verse of everything we did in that campaign, working closely with Ronald Reagan on the airplane, and then later in 1984. Of course, I was one of only 2 people that traveled with him on Air Force One throughout the 84 campaign and worked with him on all his television commercials. So nobody will find a better inside story than they will find in that book. And that's why you find it so fascinating, Roger. And you were a young man back there in 1972. You were such a strong helper in the both in 72 and then again in 1984 when we were doing that massive landslide. So you know all about what it's like in those Nixon and Reagan years, which is why you appreciated the book so much.
It's a great book, folks. You can get it at ReaganandNixon.com. Order your copy today. God bless you, Ken, and keep fighting the fight.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Not everyone is careful with your personal information, which might explain why there's a victim of identity theft every 5 seconds in the U.S. Fortunately, there's LifeLock. LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats to your identity. If your identity is stolen, a U.S.-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year by visiting LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Fellas, you know Degree Cool Rush deodorant, right? Well, last year they changed the formula, and guys were mad about it. One dude even started a petition. So guess what? Degree heard us, admitted they messed up, and brought the original Cool Rush scent back exactly how it was. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So grab some and remember why its cool, crisp, and fresh scent made it the #1 men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory for all of us.
This episode is brought to you by MeUndies. Underwear drawers are like the Wild West. You never know what you're going to pull out or what shape it's in. So upgrade your collection with the buttery soft comfort of MeUndies. MeUndies' signature fabric is as soft as a warm hug from your favorite sweater. Plus, it's breathable and oh so comfy, making it ideal for all-day wear. Get 20% off your first order, plus free shipping at MeUndies.com/Spotify with code Spotify. That's MeUndies.com/Spotify, code Spotify.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, Here's Roger Stone.
And we're back. I'm Roger Stone. I'm fighting a little touch of laryngitis, but there's so much important political news. Well, I had to be here. Back in 2013, I wrote a book called The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ. And in that tome, I made the case that Lyndon Baines Johnson headed a cabal that included the Central Intelligence Agency, organized crime, and Big Texas Oil to lure John F. Kennedy to his death in Dallas, Texas on November 22nd, 1963. I took that book to 7 publishers. They all told me that it had no commercial value. It became a New York Times best-selling book almost overnight. And I must tell you that I have seen nothing released so far from the National Archives that changed my mind. I believe that the shooter from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository Building was a man named Malcolm Mac Wallace, who had worked for Vice President and Senator Lyndon Baines Johnson, left his fingerprints on the cardboard boxes on the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository Building. No fewer than 6 eyewitnesses, see a man who meets the physical description of Wallace standing in the window, and a second witness, a man named Loy Factor, a Native American, testifies and says in his book that he was recruited by Wallace to be a backup shooter that day. He accurately describes the physical layout of the room, including a flat saw that was to the right of the window from which it was alleged that Oswald shot, but from which Wallace actually shot. Now, Johnson had a mistress named Madeline Brown. Madeline Brown bore him a son. Pardon me. The son's name was Stephen Brown. If you go online right now and look, you will see that Stephen Brown bears an amazing resemblance to his daddy, Lyndon Baines Johnson. Madeline Brown told Lyndon Johnson the night before and the morning after, on November 21st and on the 22nd, that, after today, he would never have to put up with those Kennedys again. Let's play that clip.
Went to cursing. He used foul language all the time, and I said, those Kennedys, he repeated, they will never embarrass me again. That's no threat, that's a promise. And I'd like the entire world to know how I personally feel is the fact Lyndon Johnson knew about the assassination and was a part of it.
Now, Madeline Brown was interviewed by Geraldo Rivera, interviewed by Alex Jones and many others, yet there is no record of an interview by the Warren Commission with Madeline Brown. And Robert Caro, in his famous multi-volume biography of Johnson, makes no mention of Madeline Brown. He also makes no mention of Billy Sol Estes. Now, Billy Sol Estes was a flamboyant Texas businessman who was a crony of Lyndon Johnson's, a man who would ultimately go to prison for giving kickbacks to Johnson and others. But recently, his grandson, Shane Stevens, who is a deacon, a servant leader, a husband, father of 4 boys, partial custodian of 2 nieces and a nephew, a fine Christian gentleman and a businessman. He's a former regent in the Republican National Committee, has cultivated many relationships with key Republicans across the country, strong supporter of President Donald Trump. He's also a very successful businessman. Mr. Stevens owns and operates 13 companies, has successfully exited others, and has demonstrated a consistent ability to innovate, lead, and deliver results. He joins us now because just weeks ago, he released an audio tape. I'm going to let him describe it to us, but I think this tape confirms what I'm saying, which is that the shooter of President John F. Kennedy is not Lee Harvey Oswald, but rather Malcolm Wallace. Shane, welcome to the show, and thanks for helping me struggle through a touch of laryngitis.
Excellent, Roger. Well, I'm honored to be on your show and super excited to talk to you about this amazing subject, which I don't know that there's a whole lot more important around us as far as it pertains to the future of our country. And I appreciate the wonderful introduction. I'm going to have to get all that from you because I need to share that with my wife to remind her.
Tell us about Billy Saul. Tell us your relationship to him, and tell us how you came to have this tape. And then when we come back in about 3.5 minutes, we'll play this shocking audio.
Excellent. So yeah, my granddad Saul, one of my earliest memories was picking him up from a prison in a somewhat tattered old limo. And we went out to Big Springs to pick him up, and I was really excited about it. I think I was probably 6 years old, and he picked me up while we were walking out of the prison and carried me out. And then that picture was on the front page of the Abilene Reporter News, and I thought that was really cool to be on the news, but figure out later that a lot of folks really didn't think the best of Saul. I'd say a majority of folks really thought a lot of him and thought that he could have gotten out of all the financial stuff if they not shut him down. But, there are also folks that are like, well, your granddad's a convict or inmate or a felon, so it wasn't as good of a thing as I originally thought. But either way, he was my granddad, and I loved him. He was a character, and lots of stories to tell.
What you have produced here is, of course, historic. Just to give some background, Billy Saul Estes did do time, but when he emerged from prison, he wrote a book, which I've read, and he testified under oath that he had attended meetings with Johnson and his cronies where the murder of JFK was actually planned. It is amazing that he is completely ignored in Robert Caro's biography. But this audio tape, which we will play when we come back, really should change the shape of history. Malcolm Mac Wallace was an agriculture department employee in a patronage job arranged for by Senator Lyndon Baines Johnson. We have his fingerprints because in 1951, he was convicted of first-degree murder in the murder of a man named John Douglas Kinzer. Kinzer shot and killed because he was trying to blackmail Senator Lyndon Baines Johnson. Those fingerprints, which were confirmed by Nathan Darby of the Austin Police Department, one of the country's leading fingerprint technicians and experts, to belong to the man who really did shoot John F. Kennedy. That would be Malcolm Mac Wallace. When we come back, more with Shane Stevens, and we'll play this historic tape. Whatever you do, folks, don't touch that dial.
This is The Roger Stone Show. Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone, who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now, he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone.
Roger Stone.
This is The Roger Stone Show.
Presented by Colonial Metals Group.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
And we're back. I'm Roger Stone, and we are on the Red Apple Audio Network. God bless you as I soldier through just a touch of laryngitis, but today's political news was just too hot for me not to do the show. I'm joined by Shane Stevens. He is a businessman and a patriot, of a Texan. He is also the grandson of Billy Saul Estes. Now, just weeks ago, Shane Stevens unearthed a audio tape, which I really think should change history, I watched him on Glenn Beck the other day. By the way, Shane, I think you were terrific. But what you're about to hear is a conversation between Billy Sol Estes, the flamboyant Texas businessman, crony of Lyndon Johnson, and Cliff Carter, who was Lyndon Johnson's chief political operative. He was the executive director of the Democrat National Committee. Let's roll this tape.
It's sure good to see you. How's life treating you today?
Well, Saul, it's been a pretty touch and go situation. Lyndon and I have had quite a few unpleasant words here lately over the deal that he hired Mike Wallace to assassinate the president. It's been hectic in every way, but we've lived through it this far. I guess we'll continue to do so. Lyndon should have never issued that order to Mike. But we've had our differences, and I'm a true blue to Lyndon, as I've always been, and tried to carry out every order that he'd ever given me. But this is one I'll probably never be able to forget. And the times that we've had in Texas, and the embarrassment that Lyndon had gotten from Kennedy, I guess there wasn't anything else to do but what he did.
Well, you know, Lyndon could have really hit me if he would.
Well, Lyndon's the kind of person that doesn't want to help anyone. He's all for Lyndon, and that's the way he's pretty much always been.
Well, they had me backed up on that Henry Marshall killing, and they just kind of blackmailed me to keep my mouth shut. And if I hadn't had a bunch of tapes that I played after he got killed, because, 17 got killed in this situation very mysteriously. And I've done a lot of time, and I've lost a lot of money, and hurt my family a whole lot. And it's really got me disgusted with Lyndon in one way. In one way, I feel real sorry for him. But I really feel like that in Lyndon's heart, he felt like that he was doing the right thing. He felt like that he was the savior of the common man. I feel like that in his heart, he wanted to help people.
So that reference to Henry Marshall. Henry Marshall was a Texas Ranger who was investigating corruption by Lyndon Baines Johnson, who was shot and killed at his ranch. The local coroner, a Johnson man, called it suicide, said he had shot himself in the head with his own rifle. Yet a gas station attendant only miles from the ranch identified Malcolm Mac Wallace as the man who stopped at the gas station to ask directions to the Marshall Ranch. Yet another of the many killings that I document in my book, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, the case against the LBJ. Shane, with about 4 minutes to go, how did you come to acquire this audio tape?
So it would have been approximately 10 years ago, and that we'd known that the tapes were out there. My granddad always said that was the only reason that he was able to stay alive, and he supposedly had tapes of, prior to the assassination of Johnson and after. And these tapes were in the hands of my uncle, Daryl Bright, and he reached out to his daughter, Star, and said that he's getting dementia and he wants to get rid of the tapes, and that Saul always said he'd know what to do if the time came, but, Saul had passed away, I think, in 2012. So he wanted her to take them, and my little brother Clay went and got them. She didn't want to keep them, so she had me take them. So I just held on to them, and I did have them transcribed over, and that's kind of a story in itself. But got the audio, and my jaw dropped when I heard it and realized that what Saul had always said about his tapes and Lyndon and Cliff Carter and all that was true. It was there.
Now, once you release this, has the mainstream media, beat down your door for interviews or to listen to the tape?
No. No, they're ducking from this as hard as they can because they were complicit in the cover-up. So, Glenn Beck, he really took a big chance of sharing this, and I'm not sure if he's had a lot of backlash, blowback from it. But, I think if the public continues to show the same level of interest in this and they continue to push for more information, which there is a lot more to share about all of this. So, a lot of detail. If you go into every word and every sentence within this audio, it packs a lot. And I don't know that mainstream media can truly dodge it and avoid it forever, because I've got 4 or 5 more podcasts lined up with people that are just constantly reaching out, wanting to share it with their audience. And there seems to be kind of an insatiable appetite amongst the American public and really overseas as well, of folks that know we were lied to. They know that the truth was bent. They know it's an injustice of what happened to JFK. And we just have a more educated populace now, I think, and a wiser populace that understands we have a government that may not have been so honest with us.
To say the least, when you combine it to the fact that the Dallas police paraffin test on Lee Harvey Oswald showed no powder burns on him, no nitrates on his arms, his face, his cheeks, his hands. Clearly he didn't shoot a weapon that day. Now you add to it the testimony of Victoria Adams, who was on the staircase between floors 6 and 2, where Oswald was caught 90 seconds after Kennedy was shot. It becomes abundantly clear that you have helped prove that Lee Harvey Oswald, as he said that day, was a patsy, and he shot no one. Shane Stevens, thank you so much for joining us today on The Roger Stone Show.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
This is The Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
And we're back. I'm Roger Stone, fighting a touch of laryngitis, but still here on the ramparts. Joining me now is Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer. He is a distinguished intelligence officer, author, and national security expert with over 35 years of experience in global and national security. As president of the London Center for Policy Research, he advises senior officials across the White House, intelligence community, Pentagon, and the Congress. He is a recipient of the Bronze Star Medal. He has a notable military career, which includes task force leadership at Stratus Ivy, focusing on advancing technology and information operations. He has a best-selling memoir, which I commend to you. It's Operation Dark Heart, which offers an insider's perspective on intelligence operations in Afghanistan. In 2020, Colonel Shaffer served as the National Security Advisor for President Donald Trump's re-election campaign, and he contributes his extensive experience to the administration's security strategies even today, and you can see him on the media. He is a most articulate spokesman for our country. Colonel Shaffer, welcome to the Roger Stone Show.
Roger, I always find our conversations enlightening and fun, so thanks for having me. I appreciate joining you today.
So let me get your take on Signalgate, as we now call it. This, to me, seems like just another effort to get a scalp. The same people who had no problem with Hillary Clinton's use of an illegal server utilizing classified information, the same people who had no objection to Biden's State Department official Rob Malley leaking classified documents to the Iranians, now they are raising holy hell about this. Your view?
Yeah. So, I'd like to take a step back and review some of the things you just mentioned. For example, the Hillary Clinton server. We know, Roger, and I got this directly from the Defense Intelligence Agency, IG, that they had proved through researching the metadata of her email that a carbon copy, every time an email was sent to and from Hillary Clinton's illegal unclassified server, it was going to a place called Carter Heavy Equipment. Now, you might ask yourself, why would Carter Heavy Equipment, a technology, a production company of construction of vehicles, get that? Well, it turned out it was a Chinese intelligence cover. It was a front. And so, literally in real time, all but 5 email of those thousands were read by the Chinese. And now we know by the fact that the same people I spoke to at the IG confirmed that there were sensitive information relating to real true name assets and operations. So that was literally ignored by the FBI. And I know from talking, again, firsthand, talking to the people involved, this isn't me reading about it, this is me talking to folks, they took that information to the FBI where it was promptly ignored. So we know, and this is something I do hope this administration goes back and takes a second look at, that Hillary Clinton compromised national security in ways we still can't fully understand. And then you fast forward to events in Afghanistan where Joe Biden decided, we're just going to leave and we're going to allow for Bagram, which we had never planned to give up, to fall into the hands of the Taliban, giving away our best asset in the region, and then having to do this backdoor, last-minute, State Department-led disaster of a withdrawal from Kabul, where 13 Americans lost their lives. And, of course, no one got fired. So we're supposed to ignore those actions that either were never fully investigated or resulted in the tragic loss of American life for no reason. We're supposed to pretend that those don't mean anything, and yet somehow this signal thing does. And fast forwarding then to the signal thing, John Ratcliffe, the director of CIA, stated during testimony at least twice that the events we're discussing, the Signal Gate issue, happened between U.S. government officials on government phones with a government-issued version of Signal. So this is essentially a closed system. The only mystery that remains is how did Jeffrey Goldberg's number get on that system? That's something I think people are looking at. I know Elon Musk is looking at. That's kind of the only mystery. But the whole idea that somehow individuals with clearance talking about events in general, and again, there was no specification of targets. There was no specification of exact locations of those targets. Essentially, it was a last-minute update on events that were happening in real time. And I can tell you as a military planner, Roger, that does not equate to a quote-unquote war plan. As a matter of fact, it doesn't even equate to an operational execution order to go do something, because this was all being done in real time, notifying leadership of events just so they're prepared and understand what's going on. That's it. That's what happened. And so I find it appalling that the Democrats, who never said a single word about Hillary Clinton's email server, which compromised our national security, or the tragic events of the Afghan withdrawal, that somehow we're supposed to equate real-time information being shared about, amongst principals, that was somehow a loss of classified information. It wasn't, by all definition. So I just think it's dangerous that you have the Democrats so focused on trying to get rid of Pete Hegseth. And by the way, I think this is both sides. I think there's some folks on the Republican side who don't like Pete, because Pete has been very clear on supporting President Trump and his policies to the point of where Pete, and I know Pete personally, he's not a neocon. He's someone who believes in the Constitution. He's written about his beliefs, and he's going to be essentially unassailable. The big corporations who depend on Pentagon contracts can't get to him. The neocons who basically have universal influence can't get to him. And I think in many ways this is a setup to try to get Pete out, and I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I agree with your assessment, both of him as a fine appointment. But the president, I think, is not going to be spooked here. He has made it very clear that he stands by his team. The left is looking for a scalp. Of that, there is no doubt. What significance do you think there is, if any, in the fact that Catherine Maher, the left-wing NPR CEO, is on the board of Signal?
Yeah. Well, Conservatives, you're going to find that it actually has a degree in environmental studies, Wright State University, 86. And I find, Roger, as a degreed expert, the complete fiction they put out regarding science, or their so-called, environmental science, is appalling. It's false. It's in fact, it's dangerously false. It creates a false narrative, thinking somehow we're going to lose the planet in 10 years. It's not going to happen. And just for record, we haven't been in existence as a society for long enough to understand one cycle of climate. One cycle of climate is between 10 and 11,000 years. So just as a personal note, that is something they constantly preach, that, throwing money at this non-existent problem is something. So you just take that then and put her into the middle of other things. Her philosophy, her politics follow her. And I think it was abundantly clear during the hearings this past week, even Bill Maher, for goodness sake, who is not a conservative, said that her views are too extreme. So when you got an extreme left guy saying that another person's views are too extreme, I take him at their word. So I do wonder, and I think it's something worth looking at. And I think Elon Musk, when he starts doing his review of the circumstance going into the data, we'll be able to kind of find out who talked to who when, and when who was added. There's always a trail, Roger, that is deep in the data. We have known this since the late 1990s. You mentioned Stratus Ivy, my task force. We were doing this sort of review of data, looking at data mining, things like that, long before anybody even knew it existed or as an issue. So I think it's something that Elon Musk should, and I think will, look at. And yeah, I don't think anyone should be surprised if we come to find that she was somehow involved in the shenanigans based on who she is and what she's doing. And yeah, the last place you'd want her is on the board of Signal.
Amen to that. When we come back, I'm going to ask Colonel Tony Shaffer to try to assess the situation in Ukraine. I see Vladimir Zelensky now saying statements like, Putin will soon die. I'm not sure what that's all about. Whatever you do, folks, we'll be right back with Colonel Tony Shaffer, who will give us his unique perspective as President Trump struggles to bring the war between Ukraine and Russia to a conclusion. I look forward to his expert opinion on the other side. Whatever you do, folks, don't touch that dial, because we'll be right back.
This is the Roger Stone Show. Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone, who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now, he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone.
Roger Stone.
This is the Roger Stone Show.
Presented by Colonial Metals Group.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
And we're back. This is the Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Audio Network. We're talking to Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer. He's a distinguished intelligence officer, author, and national security expert with over 35 years of experience in global and national security, also a recipient of the Bronze Star Medal. His best-selling memoir, Operation Dark Heart, tells you the insider's perspective on intelligence operations in Afghanistan. I commend it to you. Colonel Shaffer, I'm trying to figure out what's going on in the president's efforts to end the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. Every time it seems to me like he has one side put together, the other side seems to fall apart. The president's a master negotiator, but he knows it takes two to tango. What's going on here?
So it's a bit complicated by the fact that the agreed upon and stated policy is to end the war. That's what we're going to do. You have the Europeans, that includes the French, British, and everyone over there, going in the opposite direction, using bellicose language, having war conferences. They've gone from calling, they wanted to put NATO troops in as peacekeepers in Ukraine. Of course, that was instantly vetoed. So they've gone from calling it peacekeepers to an assurance force. So I guess that's like an emotional support animal that sits in the back and gives back rubs or something. Who knows? Anyway, my point I'm trying to get to is that because of the complexities, the president has cut everybody out except the Russians. We are now bilaterally, which is going back to the old Cold War, to Ronald Reagan, we negotiating directly with the Russians. I think this is a necessary step. Now, let's frame this in a way that you're not going to hear from the mainstream media. First, right now, as we speak, there are 8 meeting engagements, military terms for ground conflict, ground war in Ukraine through the 4 oblasts and Kursk. The Russians are winning on all 8 fronts. It is what it is. It's nothing to do with us. And I think Ukraine knows that. Ukraine is desperate to do something to stop it. And at this point, if something doesn't happen in about 2 months, Russia is going to win this flat out. I think Putin, I'm not pro-Putin, but I think Putin is in a position to win this if he so chooses right now. President Trump knows that. So he's trying to negotiate, that is Trump, from the position of trying to benefit everybody, to include the Ukrainians. And that's why he's proposed this mineral deal that if we go in there as investors, as partners, the Russians aren't going to mess with us. We don't have to put 2 troops on the ground to ensure Ukraine's future stability. But Zelensky doesn't seem to understand this advanced concept. Apparently, his degree ended somewhere between clown school and how to wear high heels when he was being trained, just saying. So the engagement actually has netted some very positive threads that I think we should weave into the settlement. First off, after the first official phone call between Vladimir Putin and President Trump, there was an agreement that the Russians, would help us with Iran. Huge issue. Most importantly, the Russians have said they would be mediators. The Iranians responded formally within the last 24 hours to President Trump's letter to them saying you need to negotiate. While the Iranians said they wouldn't negotiate with us, they did say we negotiate for a third party. So that's progress. So the big thing, Roger, is that the president is not simply focused on Ukraine. He's looking at how can we re-engage the Russians across the board and do so to actually work with them on some issues of mutual interest. And the big thing to me is, and you were an advisor to President Nixon. Nixon played the China card against Russia during the Cold War. Well, President Trump's trying to play the Russia card against China to break them apart, because that's a key thing. Whenever China looks at Russia, they see food. They see something they're going to consume, and the Russians know this. So I think President Trump is going to be willing and able to actually use some very excellent diplomacy, some realpolitik, and start pushing back on some of the left in our country and some of the folks in Europe and other places who don't understand that this is not about Ukraine. It's about everything regarding the direction of the global hegemon. Russia recognizes China becoming the global hegemon is not a good idea. The Chinese have stated unambiguously their intention is to first dominate the Pacific Rim and then the globe. I think President Trump recognizes that. I think Putin recognizes that. And I think there are many more things we can do with the Russians that will benefit the West. Russia has immense natural resources. They actually do want to engage with the Europeans in commerce. Commerce is the language of peace. President Trump is trying to encourage those who are willing to speak that language to become involved with us and move forward to seek that peace. So will we resolve Ukraine? Ukraine will be resolved one way or another by summer. Either they're going to actually accept the terms we're negotiating on their behalf, or if they decide they want to go with the Europeans, who are unreliable partners, I think the Russians are going to win the war outright. And that's something that, that'll be a choice that the Ukrainians make ultimately.
Yeah, one of the great failures, I think, of Biden's foreign policy was driving the Russians and the Chinese together. They are, they have a long common border and centuries of distrust. The fact that they are both communists or at least authoritarian, we should not assume that they are natural allies. They are actually natural adversaries. Nixon played this brilliantly. Trump is attempting to do the exact same thing. we should be, I'm not pro-Putin either, although people will say we both are because we want to end the war. But look, I had members of my own family mowed down by Russian tanks in Budapest in 1956. Yep. I'm not a fan of Putin. He's a thug.
Nor am I.
But why does Zelensky continue to keep saying that Putin will die soon? He seems to be implying that there's going to be an attempt to assassinate him. We've got about 2 minutes left.
Yeah, so, Roger, I think that's the thing. I think that's an aspiration. You and I speak a very similar language of like how things work in the real world. And the real world is the Ukrainians have involved themselves in conducting what they call special operations, what we would consider assassination plots against the Russian leadership. They've actually killed at least 2 Russian generals within Russia proper. They've gone after leadership targets before. I think this is Tony Schaefer speaking. I haven't spoken to anybody about this. I think this is all about Zelensky and his alternate universe believing somehow that some plot they have either put together or are putting together will resolve the war in their favor by simply eliminating Putin. And let me say this, and I hope someone from Ukraine is listening. You don't understand. You remove Putin, you're probably going to get someone who's an order of magnitude more aggressive than Putin. So what they think they're wishing for would get them something the opposite of what I think they want. So I'll just leave it at that. But I think that they desire that, Roger. I don't think they understand what they're asking for or what the outcome would be if they're successful in doing that.
Telegraphing your punches, you have to assume that Putin has hardliners that he has to deal with internally.
Absolutely.
And my guess is you're absolutely right. What the Ukrainians would get would be far worse than what they have today. All right, we have to wrap it up there. I want to thank my guest, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaefer. I want to thank my audience also for helping me soldier through with a touch of laryngitis here. So much breaking news on the JFK assassination document releases. Well, I've worn myself out. I want to thank you for joining us today on The Roger Stone Show. Until we meet again, God bless you and Godspeed.
Going to the gym can be discouraging, especially if you're putting in the work but barely seeing changes. But with Tonal, you can actually see your progress with every workout. Tonal provides the convenience of a full gym and the expertise of a personal trainer anytime at home with one sleek system. Designed to reduce your mental load, Tonal is the ultimate strength training system, helping you focus less on workout planning and more on getting results. No more second-guessing your technique. Tonal gives you real-time coaching cues to dial in your form and help you lift safely and effectively. After a quick assessment, Tonal sets the optimal weight for every move and adjusts in 1 pound increments as you get stronger, so you're always challenged. Tonal lets you choose from a variety of expert-led workouts, from strength to aero hit to yoga and mobility, to keep you coming back for more. For a limited time, go to Tonal.com to get $500 off your Tonal purchase, plus a free 4-year warranty. That's Tonal.com for $500 off, plus a free 4-year warranty. Tonal.com.